Welcome to the Vertical MRO Podcast, where we dive into the world of helicopter maintenance, repair, and overhaul. In each episode, we talk with the technicians, engineers, and experts who keep helicopters flying. Because at the end of the day, no maintenance, no mission. As far as other issues you guys are facing that we really haven't talked about when it comes to part supply issues, anything that you guys are dealing with that's unique outside of the scope of our conversation?
I mean, as MRO suppliers, our customers are the operators. We can never really forget that. I feel like we're in between the OEM and the operator sometimes, especially if you're a service center or a parts dealer for an OEM. I just think continuing to keep the customer in your mind all the time when you're dealing with these big problems, and then you deal with new problems every day, and you can kind of lose the forest for the trees a bit. It feels like you're always putting out fires, but it's like you have to remember, customers, you got to keep them happy, and that you just can't forget that, and all these problems we face left and right. It's like you got to keep the relationship going and everyone happy and everyone flying. That's the hardest part.
Welcome back to the Vertical MRO Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS in a partnership with Vertical Plus. Recorded on location at the Vertical MRO Conference in Kelowna, Canada, and hosted by me, Jon Gray. This panel brings together voices from across the helicopter maintenance ecosystem to unpack the real issues facing MRO suppliers today and how those challenges are reshaping the industry. Panelists include Mark Ledoux of VIH Aerospace, Jason Guerin of HeliWalters Canada, Kate Desai of Precision Aviation Group, Jeff Denemy of Alpine Aerotech, and Maria Aguirre of Airbus, representing operators, suppliers, distributors, and maintenance leadership from across the MRO community. The panel dives into the growing unpredictability of the supply chain, where shortages of even basic hardware and sudden manufacturing disruptions can derail maintenance events. When helicopters are already torn down, small missing parts can quickly become major operational customer challenges. Communication emerges as a recurring theme, with panelists stressing the importance of transparency, whether coordinating with OEMs, planning maintenance further ahead, or managing customer expectations in an uncertain environment. Labor shortages and recruitment also take center stage, particularly the challenge of attracting and retaining the next generation of AMEs. Panelists discuss how investment in facilities, technology, culture, and work-life balances become essential. Additional discussion touches on predictive maintenance, inventory strategy, tariffs, part outs, and the role of technology in forecasting needs. The takeaway is clear. Collaboration across the MRO ecosystem is no longer a nice to have, but a requirement for navigating today's supply and labor realities. Special thanks to our sponsors, Alpine Aerotech, Precision Aviation Group, and Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing. Hey, welcome everybody to Vertical MRO. Once again, happy to have you all here. This is one of the conversations I've been looking forward to all week. All these conversations are great, but this is a particular conversation that's of interest to everybody, and as all the conversations are. But this one's, I think, got some particular interest. So much so, we've got our special security agent, Val Medved, in the audience. If Val comes charging at you, there's something wrong. But honestly, we're happy to be here in Hangar Z in Vertical MRO Podcast fashion. We do have a drink of the day. So cheers to everybody. So today's topic is, like I said, of particular interest to a lot of folks. A lot of people are dealing with a lot of issues regarding the supply chain. Hence the topic, issues facing MRO suppliers. So if you guys could just start by introducing yourself, let us know where you're from, and we'll go from there.
My name is Mark Ledoux. I'm with VIH Aerospace, and I'm their MRO and parts sales manager. I'm an AME by trade. I finished BCIT in 2006 and apprenticed and became an AME and worked in hangars and in the field all over the country. And in the last 6 years, I've taken on a sales role with VIH Aerospace. So I sell parts and I manage components like transmissions and such coming in and out of our component shop. And I'm really happy to be on this panel. So
just a little bit of experience and a little bit of issuing with supply.
Well, it really helps with customers if you've got a technical background to be able to speak their language when you're talking about the internals of a transmission or whatever issue they're facing. So.
Yeah. Good afternoon. I'm Jason Gray. I'm with HeliWalters Canada and Napa Valley Helicopters in Idaho. I'm AMES by trade. Went to SAIT and worked for Hugh Whitfield my whole life. I was operations, started as a structures apprentice and an operations manager, and now VP of his development.
Hey, Keaton Desai, Chief Sales and Marketing Officer with Precision Aviation Group. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, and I've been in the space for close to 30 years, but with Precision for 21. And our business is primarily focused on MRO. So excited to be up here and join this incredible panel and share some stories with you guys.
I'm Jeff Denby. I'm the president of Alpine Aerotech here in Kelowna and Abbotsford, and my background is AME as well. So just happy to be here, and thanks for having us.
Hi, Maria Aguirre, Airbus Helicopters, and I born and raised in Ecuador. I moved to the U.S. for my first MRO job in 1995, so I'm giving away my age, and very excited to be here. I joined Helicopters actually April of this year, so very excited to be here with this panel.
We'll go easy on you.
I doubt it, but okay.
What's really cool about this panel in this room is we've got all this experience on one panel, on one stage, under one roof, with everyone here's part of the community. I think that's the magic in this conference, is to bring everybody from the same community under one roof to exchange information and ideas that'll make us better, more efficient, effective when we go back home. So thank you guys for joining us in the panel. I think I'm just gonna rip the Band-Aid off and pose the question, and we'll start here and we'll move our way down. What are we experiencing with issues as it pertains to the supply chain and shortage of parts?
I think the biggest issue is the unpredictability of what is a pinch point in the supply chain. There seems to be no consistent rhyme or reason for why something's delayed. I mean, lately it's been Cherry Max rivets, of all things. You can't get them and they're like $6 a piece. When did that happen? So, or a grease factory catches on fire. So it's one thing when the OEMs maybe have a delay on a handful of parts and you can talk to your customers and start to plan ahead a year or two. But when you've got someone's machine ripped apart and you can't get the right length of, Cherry Max rivet or high lock or a collar for the high lock, you got big problems, and it's a hard thing to explain to the customer. So I think it's just the randomness, the uniqueness, and that's the biggest point.
When you talk about explaining, I think a lot of the themes and a lot of these conversations comes down to communication. And I think we'll see as we talk about how those communication tactics comes in handy when we're dealing with these shortages. What are you seeing?
And I agree with both you, John and Mark. The communication is pinnacle. It can be the pillar to our success, or it can be a complete pit. It's communication with the customer is absolutely essential. We have to know as much as we can know up at the forefront, so we can plan what parts to have in stock that doesn't delay the project, and never overpromise. And that's where the communication comes in.
What unique areas in the industry are you seeing some of the shortages, and what is your kind of take on maybe why we're seeing some of that?
Well, I guess it's just the supply and demand, raw materials, and no one can ever plan for those shortages. The cost, like Mark says, Cherry Max are now $6 a piece where they were 50 cents. Just obtaining that stuff at whatever the cost is, it will delay a project. And that can't be helped.
I think it's like a fortune cookie. It's like you wake up and you crack open the packet and it's like, oh, today's challenge is tariffs, supply chain. We have a lot of material on order boards for throughout the whole year, and we're supposed to get X dollars show up every month. And we learn, 3 days before it's supposed to deliver, we're not shipping for another 6 weeks because of a material shortage. And I think that the challenge is just trying to get ahead of that unpredictability, even when you've planned for it. The last panel talked a lot about AI and understanding the data and planning for that. But I think every day that we're up here, or every day that we go to work, there's always challenges with somebody's not holding up to their end of the commitment. And it's typically going to be the OEMs or the manufacturers of these parts. So
the fortune cookie philosophy is funny. I haven't heard it described that way. I think it's a pretty good way to describe it. But communication's big. We talked about predictive maintenance and how that essentially can help some of these issues. I'm going to skip to you, Maria. As far as it pertains to predictive maintenance and understanding as an OEM, if you're able to predict based on predictive maintenance when some of these parts might be needed, is that helping you guys, or what are you seeing on the OEM side?
For sure, it does, right? The communication, the more we understand where our customers are, what their needs are, and preventive maintenance at hand, it's huge for us. There's, of course, critical items that we still struggle. We're still having that wave left from the pandemic, right? Trying to recover, and there's certain things like you guys mentioned before, certain things that used to be critical, they're stabilized, and then you have another one popping up. So it helps us, the more our customers communicate, the more we understand where in the process of maintenance they are, we can plan. But we're still seeing the wave left from the pandemic.
Where do you see the biggest area of shortages currently as an OEM?
Well, it varies. Like you say, depending on the day, there's different things that we see. So,
do you think from an OEM perspective, do you think that it's more focused around metals particularly, or?
There's a little bit of everything, honestly.
Yeah, raw materials is interesting, right? Is that a standalone conversation? You've got not only materials issues, but supply and labor issues that relate to that. And I think the labor issues is something that we don't consider, but you look geopolitically at what's happening around the world, and there's a lot of problems in the labor market that affects the supply chain. I don't know if any of you can speak to that at all. Any insight you guys have there?
Well, VIH Aerospace is a manufacturer, so we do buy literal chunks of metal. And when you're getting a quote from a material supplier, their quote's valid for 7 days, 10 days, maybe 14 days. So when you're putting together a package of somebody wanting to build like a build-to-print part, 3, 6, 12 months from now is our delivery date, how do you get them to respond in a timely manner to lock in your price? So then you end up padding your price. Well, maybe padding's not the right word, but putting a contingency amount in your quote of the unpredictable nature of the raw material. So everything gets more expensive by another exponential amount, and then it just cascades from there.
Yeah, I think if you extrapolate that to what you're seeing, Kate, on your level, you've got high volume. How is that impacting your guys' operations and availability to produce and supply folks with what they need at a price that's somewhat predictable?
Yeah, I mean, I think great question. I think for us so far, we've tried to get ahead of the curve with 27 repair stations globally, very vertically integrated on avionics components and engines. We focus on doing long-term order boards with the OEMs to make sure that we try to get ahead of that curve. With Rolls-Royce, I think we all know that there's some shortages on some wheels and things over the last couple of years. We've got 30, 40, 50 wheels in stock trying to get ahead of that curve. So there's some minimal impact, but there's always that one part that you need, whether it's a cherry rivet, as we talked about earlier, that always shuts down that production line. But we're always trying to get ahead of the curve. We're not scared to spend money to be able to have inventory in stock, to be able to make sure we can put that product out for these mission critical operators that we service.
Cool. Jeff, I haven't forgotten about you. You're sitting over there very quiet.
I've got this.
So, from your perspective, being in the helicopter industry, we're very mission focused. And a lot of the missions that you guys conduct are very critical, life-saving missions. Talk about how these supply chain issues are impacting operations that are saving lives.
Well, I think it's not just like in every aspect of our business, it is an issue. And I think the panel before was talking about, how critical it is to pre-plan, to have parts in inventory and such. And I think there's probably a lot of people in this room are tired of hearing about, pre-planning and all that. I think we as an industry have done a pretty good job over the last 10 years of understanding that. But you really do get the rug pulled out from you when you go, we've been pre-planning for 3 years and you can't get the simplest of parts. Like, how is an operator to carry forward to be able to predict some of these things? That visibility to the OEMs is something that, is the hardest part. How do you plan for that? There is no plan. It's very reactive, and I wish there was more of an accountability from maybe the OEMs to understand that a little bit better. But I don't know how we can actually pre-plan better when the data's out there. I'm not picking on you, but the data's out there, how much we fly every year and such. So I think, yes, the OEMs are short people, and as well their vendors are short people, like we are in the industry of short people. But dealing, in supply chain issues with OEMs, it's not an easy task. We supply parts to the OEM. That's a difficult conversation to be had. So I can understand where all of the OEMs and all the parts that have to be built for the OEMs, it's a big job and it's a big wheel. So there's going to be challenges. And
one of the things that we've worked on is to really try to plan and forecast, not short term, but 3-5 years in advance, right? To also for our suppliers, right? Place POs in advance, make sure that they also can plan their operations, their investment, and it is tricky. I will acknowledge that. But we're also trying at the same time, being the OEM, to support and forecast in advance.
Keaton, from your perspective, what are you seeing across the board with OEMs as it pertains to what we're talking about? Thank you to our sponsor, Alpine Aerotech. Alpine Aerotech supports leading helicopter makes and models, including Bell, Airbus, and Leonardo. From comprehensive MRO services to innovative product development, we are your trusted partner, backed by decades of experience and industry-leading expertise. Visit us at alpineaerotech.com for more information.
There's challenges, there's difficulties, there's shortages, there's excuses. And I think to Jeff's point, or to everybody's point here, is how much planning can you truly do? I mean, we think 16 to 24 months out when we're looking at our order boards, because at the end of the day, a PT6 engine or a Rolls-Royce 250 engine, the fundamental part of that engine is not going to change, right? Our business is focused on focusing on parts that are not going to be impacted by technological evolution. Engines aren't going away, landing gear, starters, wheels and brakes. So for us, it's those parts haven't changed for the last decade. Why can't we ramp up production to be able to support the MROs of the world or the customers that we're servicing? So I don't think that there's one specific OEM that is, I guess, gets the trophy for, not having things in stock. I think it's just across the board. And I think from our perspective, it's an OEM mentality of not wanting to stock a lot of LRUs versus our model is, a lot of other operators is, we're not scared to make those investments so we can have those assets on the shelf to keep mission critical helicopters flying. And I think we've made significant investments, just like some of these other operators that are here today, to make sure that, a cherry rivet's not holding up a $6 million aircraft, or, a $40,000 piece of avionics is not holding a $60 million aircraft on the ground. So it's a tough decision to make because it's a lot of capital. But at the end of the day, the things that we all do as an industry, particularly for this event here, it's mission critical operators, whether it's saving a life, transporting a dignitary, oil and gas. I mean, there's a lot of really critical things that we all do. And I think that's really what, for us, has made a lot of our business decisions to the forefront of making those investments to support the operators and the customers that we've taken care of for years.
Thank you for your investment in the community. All of you guys, really, it's huge. I think we're looking for positive solutions for where we are, and you guys are putting your foot forward and actually making a positive mark on where we stand. Jason, for you, when you think about a positive way forward, where do you see us going? How do we move the needle and start getting better?
Well, I think if we could overcome the manpower issues, I think it would probably impact the whole industry as a whole. I mean, AOGs just compound the issue again. But we're always struggling to find good qualified people and people that are willing to just get down and if the aircraft are on the ground, they're not making money. So we're always striving, our philosophy is to never say no to any amount of work. But now we've had to just kind of more or less say that we can induct it at this time, and everyone is so busy and trying to make the industry so successful. It's very difficult with the manpower situation we have, and producing products like with the raw materials that are such a shortage at the moment, making sure that stuff doesn't hold up jobs. So as far as you were saying, it's a big financial investment to warehouse that stuff. And we never like to hold more inventory than we can possibly, because it is a financial burden. However, if we don't have it in stock, it's going to jeopardize the promise dates that we promised.
You brought up labor, and it almost seems like labor and parts and supply issues are two separate issues. But like you said, I think often they're linked together. They're part of the same problem. And we've got a general problem in our industry with recruitment and retention. So I'll ask you guys, kind of as a group, how do we as an industry get better? How do we better communicate how valuable this community is and inspire folks to join? I think this is an awesome community we're part of. We talk about the missions that we complete, the really cool things we do. How do we better motivate folks to come into the market to kind of alleviate some of these labor issues we're talking about? Mark, I'll start with you and we'll kind of work our way down.
I think it's interesting, like this type of event where you're trying to encourage students to come is a good event to start with. The schools, I've noticed, have been more proactive with maybe having more hiring fairs, more open houses. And, we've even started trying to be more proactive and saying, hey, nice to meet you, young apprentice. Please come for a tour anytime. And just encouraging and being open to introducing those young people to the industry. I think trades in general have done a little bit better job of that, but I still think when a person is still a teenager coming up through high school and what do I do, where do I go, or even at the post-secondary level, that aviation could probably do a better job. There's a lot of centers of excellence like Greater Vancouver, Texas, all over. And I don't think young teenagers know necessarily, maybe because we're not on social media enough or whatever. I'm not sure. But we need to get more young people in at the ground level and keep them.
Yeah, social media is a big part of that. I think that's how a lot of young people consume data and information now, is through social media. I'll plug the Vertical MRO social media page through that. I think our effort and our drive to try and highlight some of the cool stuff that's being done in the industry. Look at Faith Ortega and the cool stuff that she's doing through social media. That's a huge way, I think, of promoting the good work that's being done. I think it's a little awkward sometimes when you consider like you're working, you've got a camera in your face and you're doing it and you feel awkward. But I feel like the investment in doing that is for the benefit of the overall community. What are your thoughts?
I agree with Mark. I've had a number of conversations with apprentices going to school right now, BCIT and SAIT, and have them come in and see what goes on behind closed doors. The schools are a nice platform. Everything is nice and clean and tidy, and get an opportunity to go and work in the field and see what you're getting yourself into. We're very fortunate with our group of companies that we have an operations side and we have an MRO side. We've transferred guys in the summer when we inherently become a little bit slow off to our operations side, and they go out and get a chance to see what it's like to travel with a helicopter out in the field. And then when they're doing maintenance or winter maintenance, they can stay on board or they can come back into the MRO shop and learn, all the aspects of whether it's avionics or maintenance, paint, composites, structures.
Kate, and you've seen a lot, right? You've been all over the world, and from what you've seen and what you've heard, where can we move the needle here?
So this is a little bit of a long-winded answer, so hang on. I think there's a couple things, and I think, earlier there was a session on culture, work-life balance. I think for the majority of the people that are at this conference, I shouldn't say majority, maybe half, but when we got into this industry, my dad's been in this industry for 56 years, retired on a Friday, went back to work on Monday because that was his hobby, aviation. And I think when we got into this business, it was a grind. It still is a grind. But the difference today is there has to be that work-life balance, there has to be that culture, there has to be that purpose behind each company. And I think that for PAG specifically, and what I'm seeing in the industry with all of our locations is our facilities, newly acquired facilities, are bright, shiny, all the new technologies in there, the cool door swipers and all this fancy stuff. Our main corporate office in Atlanta is the oldest facility we've had forever. We're going through a $4+ million renovation that's taken us a year longer than it ever should have, but we've put in all new lightings, new shiny floors, new workbenches, really cool tools, all the technology that is attracting the right talent to come work here. Because that old dungeony place is not what's bringing in that generational difference that we're looking for to help continue to grow this and prosper this business. So there's a lot of little things that we've taken notice of as we started to do generational planning for our businesses. We've got a lot of wisdom up, at all of our businesses, and you're like, what happens if Bob gets hit by a truck tomorrow? What's going to happen? I don't know. We'll just find someone else. There's no 1-800 repair station manager that you call and it just shows up, and just all that intuition, that knowledge that's written down on manuals is going to come up, right? So for us, we've made a significant investment in ensuring that our facilities are first class, ensuring that the technology is there to attract the younger generation. Because kids, my kids, I've got two kids, 11-year-old and 13-year-old, and all I care about is a device. Dad, can I do it on this? Where's the app? We don't have an app. You got to pick up a screwdriver, you got to fix it. So making sure that all the other technologies are in our facilities to ensure that we can attract those people, but also make it fun. Also make sure that the facilities are really cool and shiny and all the fun things happen. And then also making sure that we have that work-life balance. We do a lot of little things like cookouts and gift cards for hitting certain milestones on a weekly, monthly basis to bring our teams together to be able to say, hey, let's celebrate keep your eye on the prize, but this last 30 days, we need to celebrate because you guys crushed it. So I don't know if I answered your question in whole, but there's one real life story that we all hopefully kind of catch on here, but Vertical Magazine, or better known as MHM, how many people with a raise of hands knows what the MHM stands for? Not so many. So MHM stands for Mike and Linda's 3 kids. So their logo is actually 3 kids holding hands. And I found that story out about 2 years after they started their business, which is 23 years ago. But how cool is it to think that their kids were not in this business before, but over the last 3 years, they've now been a part of this business, because I think personally watching it has gotten cooler. It's become more attractive to that generation. So we're here living what you guys, the question we're talking about, there's a real live example of MHM, right? To think 23 years ago, you created your business, initials of your kids holding hands, and now you're living it. So kudos to you guys. So we need to follow what these guys are doing.
You guys thought you were coming into a conversation on supply chain issues, and it turned into a leadership conversation and a culture conversation, but it's huge. When we talk about recruitment and retention, they're 2 different things, right? And you're touching on both sides of those. We're looking at enriching people's lives, and that affects how people come into the job. If you have an environment like you're talking about, Caton, where people want to come in, they're excited because they see the facility and all the opportunities that exist, it draws people in the front door. On the other side, if you're already working for the company and the culture that you operate under is so valuable that it doesn't matter what the person next door offers you, you're not going to leave because you love where you work. And that kind of segues to tomorrow's conversation. Clint Pulver will be here. If you haven't heard him on the podcast, he's an amazing speaker, an amazing visionary as far as leadership goes, and he'll speak to that. But in line with what you're saying, I 100% agree. If we're talking about recruitment and retention, we need to consider enriching the lives of our employees and being good leaders. So on that, good leadership, I know you've got a lot under your belt. You've seen a lot of really good things. You've implemented some amazing leadership philosophies. So from your perspective, how do we use those philosophies and tactics to move the needle in this industry?
Well, I think, we're so busy in every day in everything as leaders and as managers, just trying to manage the business. And I think, honestly, that's taken up a lot of people's time, and the succession, like you said, is sort of been forgot a little bit. And I believe we have to start at even going to the high schools and starting to get interest from that level, because we compete with everything else that's out there that you see every day driving down the road with mechanics, car mechanics, plumbers, welders, and other trades. And us, I don't think we've done a great job. I mean, something like this conference certainly helps build that knowledge for young people that come in the industry to help bridge some of these gaps. But it's a lot for managers and people that in the industry. Is just, we have to run a business, but it doesn't run without people. So really, how do we retain those people? How do we educate the new people coming up, and how do we make it exciting for them? That's a full-time job on top of everything that we've all got to do. And but it's the forefront of really moving the needle, I guess, as you say, John. It's like, you can't move the needle without people.
Right.
You're never going to do it. So it's a challenge, especially when someone said this morning, right, by 2040, we need to bring 600,000 AMEs into our business by 2040. I don't know how we're going to do that, but it's all on us to try and figure it out.
Yeah, I think these are the kind of conversations and forums where we hold those conversations, we start to generate ideas, and we take these conversations home and continue them there. And I think that grassroots level is really going to be effective. Maria, for you guys, Airbus, you've got an amazing leader, Ramon. I had a chance to talk to him in the podcast. An amazing human, an amazing leader. Talk about, from the top down at Airbus, how you guys are leading on the leadership side and how you're working to bring new folks into the industry.
So I think that finding the right, I agree, we need to be more proactive about sharing with the younger generations this passion that we have, right? We're here because we're passionate about what we do. And I believe that in the past 10, 15 years, we've done a fantastic job showing this path to women, in the industry, for more women to join us and to visualize that there's a career for them, but we're not doing it for the younger generations as proactively as we should to be able to get to the numbers that we need to be in the future, right? So one of the things that we in Airbus at large, and we started in the final assembly line in Mobile, Alabama, was a program that is called the FlyPath 9. And what it does is it brings a cohort of young adults. 9 of them, they had to go through a math assessment, make sure that they qualify for the program, and then it's a 10-week program. If they are successful in it, and they're offered a 2-year apprenticeship that is going to be paid, there will be offer benefits. And after those 2 years in the apprenticeship, there will be offer full-time employment, right? So that has been a successful program that we've implemented on fixed wing. And we just completed our first cohort in Columbus, Mississippi. So we're excited about that because it's true, right? When you're in high school, you're a senior in high school, you're probably thinking maybe a 4-year career if my grades are okay-ish and I'm going to get a scholarship, or maybe I'll join the military and they'll pay for my education eventually, or maybe it's a fast food job and I'm going to wing it. But if they don't know that there's an opportunity in this industry, that trade jobs are as valuable, and I have tremendous respect for what my guys in the shop do, and we need to share that information. Going back to the purpose of giving this younger generation purpose to join the workforce in our industry, right? We are switching from our more seasoned technicians and mechanics not only doing the day-to-day, but becoming the trainers. So we can capture all that knowledge, capture that experience that, yes, you can follow the manual, but what you learn doing it in the field is a different story, right? So we don't lose that legacy. For us, it's a critical topic of conversation across leadership.
I love the innovative solution that you've described. I think that's something we have to come up with. Again, we don't want to operate in the same way we've always done it, because obviously it's not helping us, right? We're in the same position now that we've been in for a while when it comes to recruitment. So solutions like what you guys are doing at Airbus, I think is great to look at. The rabbit hole we went down was great. I love leadership, these conversations. Recruitment and retention is huge. I want to get back to the supply chain issues. Let's talk about, it's no secret that we're all dealing with it. Every business has been impacted financially because of the supply chain shortages. I'm curious, from a positive standpoint, what have you guys done at Alpine to help you navigate those in a positive way? Those shortages and the price increases and all the things that kind of surround where we are.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
I think it's communication to our customers and really making them understand as a forefront for an OEM. It's our job to educate, the operators and partners ships that we have with customers to say, hey, like, you really got to be thinking ahead here 2, 3, 4 years, and can we order some of these parts and get you in the queue so that you're at least in line? I think that's what we're trying to do, is trying to, help in any way we can. And even taking customers, tracking reports and looking at them and pre-plan. And we have people in our procurement and sales department. They're continually looking at how do we manage our inventory differently than we used to. I have to tell a lot of people that we work with is the person with the most parts is going to win. And that's, to me, is probably, and people, but it's very true. You need to be getting in the queue and understanding it. And if you don't, you'll be left behind.
Keaton?
I don't know you were going to pick on me. Making investments, as you said, right? He with the most parts wins, but making investments, communicating with our customers. And then the third leg to this challenge is thinking outside the box. The word USM, or used serviceable material, or aircraft part outs and teardowns, was a really dirty word about 6 years ago. And now it's a very acceptable practice. Many OEMs are actually doing it, buying aircraft back from operators or throughout the world, tearing them down, certifying the parts, and helping bolster their supply chain. We've been doing that for decades. We just didn't have a fancy acronym for it, so we just said, we got some parts off of an aircraft. But we've done 17 part outs, teardowns at our facilities to help bolster our supply chain for parts. We talked about the little things that hold up a project, and dynamic components has always been a challenge for certain aircraft platforms. So when you tear down aircraft, you've got engines and dynamics, and then all the other thousands of little things that go with it. And we've realized that the old saying, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but one man's shit's another man's treasure, right? So aircraft that have 18,000 hours on them to somebody is garbage, but we'll take them because the true bones of that aircraft are still really valuable. And for us, having the shops that we have and the capabilities we have, just run them through our shops, and now you've got a serviceable asset to help bolster that supply chain. So yeah, it's communication, like Jeff says, right? Having a lot of conversations with customers around, hey, what are the challenges? What are the delays that we're anticipating? Here are some solutions to those potential delays with PMA, DER repairs, or used serviceable material from a part out perspective.
I knew going into this, communication was going to be a big theme, but thinking outside the box has also developed as a theme we're seeing here. Love what you guys are doing there. It's great. Thinking outside the box is critical here. Jason, for you guys and for your perspective, how do you see this?
Same thing. We're doing part outs. We're buying perfectly serviceable aircraft, and it kills us to have to do that and lay out that chunk of money to tear down a perfectly good aircraft to its last nuts and bolts. But that is thinking outside the box, because if the raw materials aren't available for us to buy from the OEMs, then we have to be able to come up with other solutions. And whether it's a dynamic component or a tail boom or a stabilizer, we recondition those things so that they go through the shop just like it was to come out of the factory. And when it is passed on to a customer, they never have to look at it knowing full well that we can sleep at night knowing that they're never going to have any sort of issues down the line in a week or years to come.
I just wanted to jump in and say it brings up an interesting sector of delays we haven't really talked about, and that is when you bring a transmission into an overhaul shop, often you have repairs that are needed on a case, or a bearing needs overhaul, and those get sent out to third parties like a specialist machine shop or a bearing overhaul facility. And those lead times from those providers, because of all the crush of incoming parts they're seeing, adds to the timeline of the completed component by weeks and sometimes months. So as new parts become unattainable or expensive, suddenly all that stuff in quarantine is looking pretty good. So you're going to start sending in cases and bearings that you wouldn't have before. You just wouldn't even think of it. So all of those providers, servo overhaul, machine shops, all those delays, to think outside the box is, hey, why don't I keep a main case or a quill or an input on the shelf and just offer an exchange to the customer and send theirs for repair to the same condition? And that can really speed up the delivery of the final component. So having more stock on new parts is good, used parts, but also the lesser or smaller components that build up those main parts is important.
Jeff, I see you over there stirring in your seat. What's going through your mind?
It's exactly, everybody's got to sort of think outside the box and really look ahead, like we say. But it's difficult to have the inventory that we need to keep operating. Especially I'll say from a Canadian perspective is we're already 30 points behind on exchange rate, and we pay all of our maintenance costs are in USD. We get paid in Canadian dollars, and it's tough as a aerotech or an operator to stock that inventory, and with what's going on with tariffs coming, and you have to really watch it. It's a lot going on, and inventory is I think that it's probably at the utmost break. It's at the most important part, I think, of a company right now, and how that looks on your balance sheet and cash flow, and how we have to figure this all out, and navigating at a much lesser rate than our friends in the US. It's tough for us all. So, inventory, it used to be able to, if you needed a part, you could go get it and then go start flying in a month later, and it was easy to recover that. It's hard for people to go out there and try and think to buy parts for 3 years in advance. It's a tough one for operators.
You talk about the currency issue and combine that with tariffs, and you're kind of being pressured on both sides.
Both sides.
So it makes it really difficult. Maria, from your perspective, how do we make this better, kind of in line with what we're talking about?
Well, one of the things that we look into it, because absolutely we need to be able to mitigate the risk of any disruptions with the supply chain. So we develop repair solutions to make it more cost affordable for customers, more faster in terms of turnaround time, and keep our customer flying. And it's been an interesting journey this year, I think, with all the new trade regulations to navigate the impact that we've all felt throughout the industry. But we as Airbus, we're doing our best to mitigate and minimize the impact to our customers.
I'm going to go
as much as possible, of course. No.
I'm going to go to tariffs for a minute. I think it's a 4-letter word. I was trying to wait as long as I could to bring it up, but we've got a bouncer Val here in the house to take care of any possible issues. But Kate, and I'm going to go back to you, and you guys have seen the impact of tariffs. Talk about how that's impacted your operation and how you guys are trying to respond in a positive way to that.
It's a disaster. For us, it was, hey, tariffs are in place. Today it's, a yo-yo effect of 10%, 50%, 16%, all these numbers. And the challenging piece was our supply chain, being a global business, it's a really dynamic process. So, for example, you're buying parts from Standard Aero in Winnipeg, which is great, but they're manufacturers in Poland. That same part's manufactured in Mexico, in Canada, and in Poland. Well, their system doesn't tell you that where that specific serial number was manufactured a year ago when they bought it. So you're trying to import it in the country, it gets held up in customs, and they deem that this part is now applicable for a 50% tariff. So that engine that you quoted the customer, back to your comments earlier, is you quoted the customer $100,000, and all of a sudden there's a $28,000 tariff on this one component. How do you communicate that to a customer? It's a really difficult conversation to have. And then, oh, by the way, in 3 weeks, it's now 10%, not the 40%. So we have spent a lot of brain power trying to understand that, and to the best of our ability, leverage the 9801, repair and return exemptions, the new 232 rules. But every single time we think we have a game plan, there's another curveball or a fortune cookie, right? It's like, oh, by the way, this is what's happening tomorrow. So we have navigated it from a go back to the communication piece. We've informed our customers. We've sent out a number of pieces of internal communication to explain to our teams what we're doing to help mitigate it. But most importantly, then talking to our customers about it, and really trying to work with the OEMs as well, of trying to understand why is this being done? Is this truly the only way to do it? Right? Like from my perspective, the blanket tariff charge, why? Why are you charging me for something that's not applicable for tariffs? Because that's the easy button. So we've absorbed a lot of tariff fees because we didn't want to make it uncomfortable for customers. And an example of a Canadian-based operator sends us an engine for an overhaul. Well, they're not responsible for tariffs. They're in Canada. So why are we charging them tariffs for a part we bought to service their engine in the States? Comments like, well, just ship it back to me. I'll just send it to a facility in Canada. Well, we don't want to do that. So we've had to absorb some tariffs. We've had to get creative and truly understand how can we mitigate some of these tariffs through exemptions, repair and return. I would tell you that it's still, it's getting better for now. Tomorrow could be a different story, but we have learned a lot more about tariffs than I ever thought we would have ever imagined. And we're just appreciative of our customers' patience, trying to help us navigate this together, because it really has been a total cluster.
The communication piece, that's huge. And I love that you guys are in the forefront of that. A lot of people don't understand what exactly they're dealing with. Again, and you've got your ear to the ground in this community. Are you hearing of any light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to the tariff situation?
I definitely don't want to give anybody any false hope. No.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to get any better, but I do think it's here to stay for a while.
Jason, from your perspective and what you've dealt with, talk about how tariffs have impacted you guys and what you're doing as a result?
Well, as far as our Napa facility down in Idaho, the component shop has pretty much assumed all the tariff costs. And that is just the cost of doing business, because the rules have never been really clear cut, and no one seems to know the rules change every day. So just so that we don't have this additional conversation with customers and supply chain demands and all that, we've just mitigated that by assuming those tariffs. So that's not a conversation the customer is furthermore upset by.
Is that kind of similar to what you're experiencing?
Yeah, and I find that it's not even the tariff amount or the cost, it's the knowing what's applicable or not, or is it going to change or not. And if you're shipping stuff, you used to just ship stuff by FedEx and it would just clear and you could ship it overnight and there was no problem. Well, now it gets flagged, you got to tell them, where it was smelted in China, by what molecule was from where, and it's crazy. It's crazy. And then, FedEx and all the shippers have been overwhelmed, so they hire new people and they just paint a big broad brush and just say, well, it's applicable to everything, sorry. So then you go to your independent customs brokers, which we have a good one, and they're helping the best they can. And that's been a big saver of the nuance of specific HS codes. And there's a whole panel on that coming up, so I don't want to dive into it, but it's just been frustrating, especially when you get an invoice 6 weeks later for a tariff you didn't even know about, and the customer's already got their product back and paid their bill. And it's like, well, you can't phone them now.
Yeah.
That's the worst part.
Yeah, the cross-border shipping panel will be this afternoon, a continuation of this conversation. But Maria, from the OEM perspective, how are tariffs impacting you guys, and how are you trying to respond in a way that minimizes the impact on the customer and the community as a whole? Thank you to our sponsor, AEM. Their revolutionary MTP 136D P25 aerial firefighting radio is US Forest Service approved. It's in stock and ready to ship. Grounded unexpectedly? No problem. AEM stocking dealers across North America are prepared to support all your mission critical needs. Visit aem-corp.com/radio.
Well, we are hopeful with the new US-EU agreement, and we see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. It goes down to really communication and having that transparency, right? It's been a roller coaster really to navigate the whole situation, and the percentages changing, and really understanding the origin of steel and aluminum, and so it's really keeping the communication open, I would say.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much it's a challenge for sure. I think it's just, how do we make sure that, we're watching those tariffs so that it's not getting painted as a brush and everything, they start billing. It's tough for operators enough that, if we get hit with tariffs twice a year, price increases that we don't even know are coming, that we're locked into contractual obligations with our customers, end users, forestry. We're not allowed to just say, hey, we need another 5%, but I just, I got to put it back on the OEMs a little bit. I'm not trying to hound on it, but we need the OEMs to help us go to our end users to say, hey, I just got 14% increase this year, but you're only allowing me CPI. Like, it doesn't work, and it's not going to work. But we need our partners and our OEMs to actually stand up with us when we go and we bid on contracts and we want to, new opportunities for companies. They got to stand behind us and make the end user know the challenges that we're absorbing. And I think that, that's part of it. The tariffs is part of that as well.
Yeah, definitely stand together as one community. Everyone's dealing with it, and I think we should unify in that front. Kate, and I see you kind of stirring in your seat. Do you have something to add there?
No, I'm good.
You're a liar. So we talked about technology in the earlier panel, and we talked about how the tools of technology will allow us to communicate more efficiently and help forecast some of the stuff in a way that might help us predict some of the needs we have. And we've kind of talked about that already. But thinking outside the box, when it comes to technology that's either currently available, that's new, or stuff that's kind of coming down the pipeline, is there any new technology that you guys can think of that might be able to help in this part supply shortage in this period of time we find ourselves in, whether it's 3D printing or any of those other ways of kind of addressing this in a way that we haven't thought of already? And I'll kind of open it up to whoever has a thought first.
Doesn't AI fix everything? I don't know.
No, and I think one of the it's certainly not a new term or new buzzword, but DER repairs. I mean, I think that, as you said earlier, right, is taking things that are on the shelf that we would have deemed BER or scrap or throw it away, we'll just buy a new one. As we're forced with the supply chain to say, okay, this is not available anymore, what am I going to do? And it could be a $100 part, it could be a $50,000 part, but there's enough technology out there and there's enough engineers out there and very creative people that are now looking at ways to refurbish through DER repairs, to relive or revive a part that we would have thrown away in the past. So we're doing a lot of that, to your point earlier, on engine components, specifically GG cases and other rotorcraft components, but taking the aspect of engineering, DER repairs, and all the other tools that are available out there to say, hey, instead of holding up an entire asset or a component or LRU or an aircraft, how can we take this and put some effort behind it to revive it, refurbish it, DER repair it, and basically put this thing back in service. So I don't know that, I guess it's kind of the AI process of repair and overhaul, MRO. There is a lot of activity and a lot of emphasis in the MRO side behind DER repairs on taking what was scrap before, now putting it back in service.
Mark, any insight on your behalf?
Not really. I mean, PMA parts. We've started looking at, you want to talk about like dirty words that used to be a little bit dirty. The PM, but there's so many more PMA options now that are good quality options, like from OEM owned shops that sell PMA parts. So, I mean, there's an angle that we didn't explore as much before, and now we just start quoting stuff out of the gate with PMA seals and things like that. We never thought to do that before.
I feel like, Airbus is as much of a helicopter company as it is a technology company. Like you guys invest a lot of time, effort, and money into coming up with new methods to accomplish or tackle a lot of these issues. Is there anything that you've seen from Airbus that might help in this conversation?
Well, the global scope, we've developed a project just to be able to forecast more accurately, right? And really cross-functionally having a task force of people that are really looking into critical parts, particularly to support the work that we do at the MRO. On the MRO end. And of course, having more repair solutions, increasing our capabilities in the region to be able to support our customers better and not having to wait for long lead times as much as we can at the moment.
As far as other issues you guys are facing that we really haven't talked about when it comes to part supply issues, anything that you guys are dealing with that's unique outside of the scope of our conversation? And Mark, I'll start with you and we'll work our way down.
I mean, as MRO suppliers, our customers are the operators. We can never really forget that. I think, I feel like we're in between the OEM and the operator sometimes, especially if you're a service center or a parts dealer for an OEM. I just think continuing to keep the customer in your mind all the time when you're dealing with these big problems, and then you deal with new problems every day, and you can kind of lose the forest for the trees a bit. It feels like you're always putting out fires, but it's like you have to remember, customers, you got to keep them happy, and that you just can't forget that. And all these problems we face left and right, it's like you got to keep the relationship going and everyone happy and everyone flying. That's the hardest part.
Yeah, kind of a tough position to be in the middle of all that. For you guys, Jason?
We've come across it 100 times with structural parts specifically. When they're not available for some of the legacy aircraft, we manufacture them. And with using all the OEM specs, now that we're a service center, we get the blessing of Airbus, and they provide us the data. And if they don't have the part, they'll give us the authorization to fabricate it. But we can only do that now because we are a service center, and we have to stay within the scope of what our agreement calls out in the contract.
Definitely outside the box thinking there. For you, Caton?
Our challenge is we've built, a lot of MRO facilities and made a lot of capital investments in new capabilities, which requires a lot of tooling and equipment and technical capacity. And what we're seeing more and more of today in the last 5 years is OEMs are not Airbus. For the record, we're very OEM centric at PAG, so we're not bashing on the OEMs, but they're buying up licenses, they're acquiring smaller organizations, and then they're trying to take all these capabilities, but then they don't have the resources to deploy those parts or that technology or that those parts back into the market. And when you have facilities or you have companies that are set up both geographically, from a technical aspect, or from a logistical perspective to receive a PO and deploy that part within 30 minutes, we're finding that OEMs are holding on to these licenses and not giving those back, or setting up other facilities as an authorized service center to be able to service those parts to keep operators operational. And I think there's a lot of head nodding that I'm seeing. So there's, it could be a part that goes on every helicopter, or it could be a part that goes on just one platform. But as things get acquired, the plan to put these parts back into the aftermarket or the ecosystem of parts is just not as good as it used to be. And I think that's where a lot of operators are getting frustrated from that perspective. And we are, as an MRO, we've made the investment, we have the ability. Why are we not having these conversations, right? To be able to support the customer base.
Jeff, I'm going to skip over you just briefly to go to Maria, just so you have an opportunity to answer that, as it's ongoing.
No, definitely, and we're aware, right? And we don't want to be the gatekeepers of everything. And there are some FAA-approved solutions for some of these critical items, but we also have to be mindful, right? We, as Airbus helicopters, we have a design office. There's a specific fit and function, and things that come into play with these parts, right? We want to keep the missions flying. We got to be mindful about that, but at the same time, we have to be mindful about safety. So there's an approval process for those things. Is not probably the most efficient one. We would like it to be more speedy, but at the same time, there's a lot that comes into the intellectual property and the design and actually creating a product that is going to keep the mission flying.
Back to the original question of, are there any topics or issues we haven't discussed that you guys are experiencing that is worth bringing up right now from an Airbus perspective?
No, I'd say as an industry, we're struggling with certain critical parts. We're struggling with getting the workforce ramp up as we need to, and really retaining the right type of talent, not just hiring people, but the right type of people and people that are going to fall in love. It's a different generation, is a more agile generation, and is not the same trade-oriented generation that we started in when we joined the industry. So I think those are the two fronts in which we are really focused on tackling and succeeding, hopefully. Yeah.
Jeff, going back to you, sorry to hop over you there, but anything that we need to bring up?
I think it's already all been said, but it's just we really need to think outside the box. It's kind of, I think we've exhausted a lot of, how do we tackle some of these issues? And I think forums like this, it makes people think, but I think it's really thinking outside the box, because there's a lot of us, legacy operators in Canada that we really do have to think outside the box on how we're going to maintain that fleet for the years to come, because it's just the way our business is here in Canada. So I think we just keep doing what we're doing and having conversations like this.
Well, thank you guys, all of you, for taking the time out of your schedule to join us and talk to the audience here about the things that you guys have experienced. Again, it's really cool to be here with you guys. All the experience it's up here it's humbling. So thank you guys. I'm sure people are going to have questions for you as we go from this. Encourage the conversation. I think those conversations are important. But I think collectively we'll come up with some solutions that are unique. And I'm hoping for those outside the box ideas to drive the community forward and continue the problem-solving issues that we're dealing with. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll catch you at the cross-border shipping panel next.
Thanks, Jon.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Alpine Aerotech. Alpine Aerotech supports leading helicopter makes and models, including Bell, Airbus, and Leonardo. From comprehensive MRO services to innovative product development, we are your trusted partner, backed by decades of experience and industry-leading expertise. Visit us at alpineaerotech.com for more information.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
Thank you to our sponsor, AEM. Their revolutionary MTP-136D P25 aerial firefighting radio is U.S. Forest Service approved. It's in stock and ready to ship. Grounded unexpectedly? No problem. AEM stocking dealers across North America are prepared to support all your mission-critical needs. Visit aem-corp.com/radio. Thanks for listening to the Vertical MRO Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS in partnership with Vertical Plus. Recorded on location at the Vertical MRO Conference in Kelowna, Canada, and hosted by me, Jon Gray. Today's panel with Mark Ledoux, Jason Guerin, Kate Desai, Jeff Denemy, and Maria Aguirre unpack the real challenges reshaping helicopter maintenance, from supply chain unpredictability and missing hardware to labor shortages, recruitment, and the increasing need for predictive maintenance and smart inventory strategies. The clear takeaway: transparency, collaboration, and investment in people, facilities, and technology are essential to keep the MRO ecosystem resilient and competitive. Many thanks to our panelists and to Vertical Plus for their support. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with a colleague.